like growing up somewhere else and then having to move and readjust. I think my role is a big part of the representation of the work that I do, right?
Sure.
Being able to come from a different culture and then keep those roots and then mesh with this one and have that duality, I do think
Absolutely.
helps me as a therapist
Yeah.
to be able to better understand my clients.
And then how has the journey been since? So now we're, 2023. Has your client caseload grown?
I want to say it varies. Initially, I was doing some things on the side. Right
Right.
now, I'm mainly focusing on private practice,
Right.
and I'm still thinking of certain things that I want to work with as far as workshops go that I
Yeah.
will create. But caseload is good. It does change a bit,
Hmm.
but definitely I did notice a bigger need
Yeah.
after the pandemic, working with a different population. You can
Right.
imagine being in
Right.
private practice, right,
Yeah.
versus outpatient
Sure.
services where it's very like specific and honed in. But having that background does definitely help me have the knowledge where I'm able to see certain things in a certain way.
Yeah.
So it gives me the expertise and the experience because
Hmm.
right now, even though I'm not closely working with it, but if things come up, I have the awareness.
Hmm.
To
Yep.
see and make connections. So I'm really glad I had that
Very
experience.
nice. Very nice. Yeah. Hi again, everyone. So, thank you again for joining me for another segment of Conversations with Carmen. I had the amazing opportunity to chat with my esteemed colleague Lilit as she was selected as our April 2023 Provider Spotlight. It was an amazing interview. I'm so thankful for her time and effort this morning. Should you want to email me and ask any questions about this process, my email address is cmajid.ip@soultenders.com. That's cmajid.ip@soultenders.com. And if you have questions about the Provider Spotlight process or selection process, feel free to reach out to Provider Relations. Their direct email address is providerrelations@soultenders.com. Thank you again for joining. Take care. Well, good morning, Lilith. I am so happy to have you join me this morning. And of course, I am Dr. Carmen Majid. And if you could do us the favor and just pronounce your name. It's a beautiful name, and I don't want to mispronounce it. So
Thank you so much. Lilit Melik-Bakhshyan.
wonderful. And you are a licensed marriage and family
I
therapist.
am.
Okay. How long have you been licensed?
I have been licensed since 2020.
Wonderful. Excellent. Excellent. Okay. All right, well, I'm ready to dive right in. And again, I'm so happy to have you in my space this morning. And congratulations on being selected as Soultenders April 2023 Provider Spotlight. This is phenomenal. So welcome, welcome. Alrighty. Well, we chatted a little bit over the phone a few days ago in an effort to kind of break the ice and get to know each other. And I really enjoyed that conversation. And there were a lot of wonderful takeaways that I experienced as a result of chatting with you for a bit. One of the most intriguing things that I enjoyed about that conversation was you disclosing or sharing with me that you are originally from Armenia and made your way with family to the United States at the age of 10. So I'm just wondering if you could talk to me a little bit more about that and then what some of the personal takeaways from that journey were for you as a kiddo.
Yeah, so as you could imagine, right, like growing up somewhere else and then having to move and
Yeah.
readjust,
Hmm.
I think my role is a big part of the representation of the work that I do,
Sure.
right? Being able to come from a different culture and then keep those roots and then mesh with this one and have that duality, I do think
Absolutely.
helps me as a therapist
Yeah.
to be able to better understand my clients. Um,
Hmm.
as it was happening, I don't think the transition was difficult,
Hmm.
but looking back, you have to get used to a lot of things.
Yeah.
Of course, the life there was a bit different.
Right.
The culture was different, interactions at school. And as I
Hmm.
moved here, I jumped straight to sixth grade and having that transition. And
Wow.
I spoke English, but they taught us British English. So the transition was a bit
Wow.
different in
Okay.
that sense as far as language goes. But I
Wonderful.
think I did a decent job meshing with the culture here and being able to adapt to the ways.
Wonderful. Wonderful. And was California your home when you came from Armenia, or were you and your family in another state prior?
California.
Okay. And I'm curious, do you have any knowledge or understanding of why your family chose California specifically as opposed to another coast or another state within the West Coast or
In that way, I don't. I mean, we did have family here, so it
okay.
was more familiar,
Okay.
but definitely it was a better opportunity for us because in Armenia, certain things are limited as far
Right.
as how far you can go and
Okay.
future and opportunities.
Okay. Okay. Yeah, that makes a lot of sense. And then I'm just curious, uh, coming to the US at the age of 10, did you, when you reflect back sort of in retrospect, friendships, did you have to leave friendships behind? Was it easy for you to cultivate new friendships here? How did that process kind of play out for you?
I did have to leave friendships behind, but it's easy for me to make friends.
Yeah,
So I
wonderful.
don't think and I have three older sisters, so that
Oh,
helps a lot.
amazing.
I didn't feel like I left a piece there that I was missing. It was more so about my home or the place I lived than
Yeah.
friendships. But
Mm-hmm.
having three sisters helped me with the transition as well, I would say.
Wonderful.
And I was able to make friends pretty
Excellent.
easily. Yeah.
Excellent. Wonderful. Wonderful. Thank you. Thank you for sharing a little bit more about
Of
that.
course.
Okay, my next question. So we also chatted about your beginnings with Soultenders, and so you've been licensed since 2020. You shared with me that you uh, became affiliated with Soultenders in the early days of the pandemic.
Yes.
So talk to me a little bit about that journey and what that trajectory has sort of looked like for you.
Right, right. So I actually, after I got licensed, I started with Soultenders,
Hmm.
and it's a big leap to start your own private practice while there is a pandemic. And as I started, I was fully remote, so it was something interesting to
Yeah,
figure out and explore and being
sure.
able to navigate that, right? Because
Right.
usually when you start somewhere, you get introduced, you interact with
Hmm.
people, you get familiar that way. So there was a lot of figuring out behind the scenes without meeting anybody.
Sure.
Um, I I don't know most of the people,
Yep.
and it was interesting, but
Yep.
it worked. And funny enough, I want to say starting my own private practice during the pandemic made it
Hmm.
easier in some ways because
Wow.
there was a big change that I was already going through. So was
Sure.
everybody else. And
Absolutely.
having something that I was adjusting to and then adding another adjustment,
Yeah.
it made it smoother in an interesting way.
Wow. Yeah, so it sounds like there were multiple transitions occurring at the same time. So, and then, like you said, so many of your other peers or colleagues were probably navigating similar waters, So I imagine that it was maybe reassuring to know that you weren't navigating that process alone. And then all of us who were on board with Soul Tenders, we sort of that I think we stepped into that collective experience because when
Right.
COVID hit and it was declared a worldwide emergency of sorts, it was like we were all forced to pivot, do
Right.
something at the
Right.
11th hour. So that's the collective experience. And as much as I didn't love that we were having to go through it, I was actually reassured by it too. Like, okay, I'm not alone. I'm not
Yeah.
alone. Everyone's trying to figure it out. We're all on the same page.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So it's actually kind of
Yeah.
interesting. I got licensed like in the midst of it, and I
Hmm.
started to be a licensed clinician and be on my own.
Right.
Yeah, at
Wonderful.
the core of it.
Wonderful, wonderful. And then how has the journey been since? So now we're, 2023. Has your client caseload grown sort of exponentially? Has the trajectory been sort of positive and upward? Has it been a bit of an ebb and flow? What's been your experience?
I want to say it varies. Initially, I was doing some things on the side. Right
Right,
now, I'm mainly focusing on private practice,
right.
and I'm still thinking of certain things that I want to work with as far as workshop scroll that I
Yeah,
will create. But caseload is good. It does change a bit. I want
sure.
to say,
Yeah.
based on like the nature of the clients you have.
Mm-hmm.
But definitely I did notice a bigger need
Yeah,
after the pandemic because the
absolutely.
clients are more open to it. They're
Right.
more open to talking to somebody.
Yeah,
They're exploring their options, and I want to say it being teletherapy due to
Mm-hmm.
the pandemic, doing something remote, I want to
Mm-hmm.
say it has made it easier for a lot of
Yep.
clients to explore therapy,
Absolutely.
less intimidation with,
Absolutely.
yeah.
For sure. Yeah, I've always been of that mindset. You know, as devastating as the pandemic was, and it still is in a lot of ways, it actually, one of the silver liners or one of the positive takeaways has been, like you said, broadening, expanding access for especially clients who traditionally may consider themselves to be more marginalized for whatever
Right.
reason. You know, I'm afraid to leave my house, or it's intimidating sitting and sharing space
Opening
with
up,
an
yeah.
expert, and what are they going to think about me? And you know,
Exactly.
so I've said this since day one. This has really been a blessing in a lot of ways. You know, so like you, to your point, people feeling more open. Sometimes, you know, talking to the therapist by the phone or on a laptop in the Zoom
Right.
environment is less intimidating, and they
Yeah.
can really just be themselves. And obviously, we know, clinically speaking, when people are themselves and their defenses are lowered and their fears and anxieties are sort of calmed, then
Yes.
the work begins. So,
Definitely.
yeah,
It does
awesome.
help for them to do it from the comfort of their
Oh,
home.
yeah,
So
for
it's like
sure.
a comfort blanket in a
That's
way.
right. That's right. Wonderful. What were you doing before private practice? I know we talked a little bit about you have a background in having worked in inpatient settings. What can you tell me about
Yeah,
that?
so I was at a psychiatric hospital. It was actually at the outpatient setting, but it
Oh,
was really close to inpatient. So it was outpatient services. It was a
okay,
psychiatric hospital. They were
okay,
really close to each other.
okay.
I did most of my hours there.
Hmm.
While I was doing that, I did explore other areas. I've worked at schools. I've done the therapy to kids, elementary, middle schools.
Wonderful.
I did some group practice on the side at a clinic, but mainly was the psychiatric hospital. I was there full time.
Okay, okay. And what did you enjoy about that experience? And then what did you not so much enjoy about that experience?
Oh, I will start with what I didn't enjoy. It's not that I didn't enjoy. There is some, sadness with
Yeah.
working with that population in the sense that there's so much that you can do.
Mm-hmm.
So it's more so maintenance, but
Sure.
that is really huge and significant. That's equally important.
Yeah.
But, kind of seeing these clients day to day and not having the ability to implement much change.
Right.
But so I would say that's the part I didn't enjoy before them.
Yeah.
And enjoying was just being able to be there for them
Mm.
because I, unfortunately, right, if you have chronic mental illness, the
Yeah.
psychiatric hospital, you could imagine there's some stigma that people don't
Sure.
understand them.
Sure.
And maybe, there's a lot of
Mm-hmm.
people that don't want to work with them, unfortunately. It's
Yeah.
very sad. But
Right.
um, I'm so thankful that I had that experience. I want to say it was a beautiful experience. I'm happy that I was there for them. It wasn't easy leaving, but
Absolutely.
you know that's life,
I can,
transitioning and going
right.
to other places.
Right. I can imagine. I can imagine. And with the with working with chronically mentally ill patients, I don't know from your perspective if one of the, for lack of a better way of putting it, maybe if one of the limitations is not having the opportunity to experience that patient's fully expressed self. Because when someone is struggling with mental illness, I don't know if part of your genuine self sort of gets fragmented or gets cut off, and you're not able to necessarily tap into that and access that, to your point of maintenance therapy. So if that resonates with you, what I just said, how would you say you were able to, despite any limitations, how would you say you were able to build rapport? What did rapport look like? Because I imagine that building rapport
Mhm.
with a cross section of clients is going to look different depending on who you're.
Absolutely.
Okay. What did that look like?
Yeah, getting to know them, right? So I
Mm-hmm.
want to say one of the things I've learned there is you're a human. We
Yeah.
know that as
Right.
therapists, but a lot of times it's easy to get into a role.
Yep.
And with them, building rapport was just me being like them. I'm your friend.
Yeah.
We're just hanging out. Like, what
Sure.
do you like to do for fun? Like,
Yeah.
relating on that level. Like,
Wonderful.
oh, I like that song too. What's your other favorite song?
Yeah.
Or, what do you like to do for fun? So
Sure.
being able to show a little bit of you
Mm-hmm.
made them feel comfortable to,
Hmm.
oh, okay, this isn't an expert. I'm not being looked down.
Right.
I
Judged. Yeah.
yeah.
Hmm.
So I'm a
Wonderful.
human too.
Yeah.
It would probably can relate on a lot of levels. So being able to connect with them on that level and being,
Excellent.
myself, help them be themselves or show that
Absolutely.
side.
Right.
A little earlier you said that, right? So for
Yeah.
them to feel comfortable to connect. So if
Yeah.
you show comfort and you don't have defenses,
Yep.
um, that helps the clients to do the same
Very
thing.
nice. Definitely modeling for them and mirroring them. It's
Absolutely.
wonderful. Wonderful. And last question about that specific population. How would you say working with that particular population prepared you for private practice? Loose association, loose connection, maybe? I don't know. What do you think?
It helped me in a way because right now I'm working with a different population. You can
Right,
imagine being in
right.
private practice, right,
Yeah,
versus outpatient
sure.
services where it's very like specific and honed in. But having that background does definitely help me have the knowledge where I'm able to see certain things in a certain way.
Yeah.
So it gives me the expertise and the experience because
Hmm.
right now, even though I'm not closely working with it, but if things come up, I have the awareness.
Hmm.
To
Yep.
see and make connections. So
Yeah.
I'm really glad I had that experience.
Very nice. Very nice. Yeah, you've got an amazing set of skills in your repertoire, and we don't, as clinicians, we don't necessarily pull from that bag of tools every single day or every single
Right.
session, but they're on reserve should we need them. So
Exactly.
that's wonderful. Okay, fast forward to today. So I know that you are working with population ages 18 to 40, like adults.
Yes.
And why that particular population? What do you enjoy about working with the adult population and outpatient?
Yeah, so I want to say that population, the way I do my work as a therapist
Hmm.
and like my belief system and what I believe in humans and what they're able to, I want to say that's the age that they can implement certain things into their life. And it
Hmm.
is easier to do certain transitions and discoveries and
Sure.
changes versus later on you're more set in your ways.
Right.
I'm not saying it's impossible,
Right.
but when you are getting to know yourself, if you're 18, 19, it is easier for you to do that work, right? So for example, one of the works I do with my clients is
Hmm.
self-discovery, relationship healing within yourself.
Wow.
So doing that in your 18 to 40
Right.
will definitely, be more
Wonderful.
significant than trying to heal things from the past. Again, I'm not saying it's
Yeah.
impossible, but
Right.
the
Wonderful.
relationship healing, discovery, self accountability, all of that, 18
Hmm.
till 40, that's the
Hmm.
best time to make those connections or work.
Absolutely. I love that. I love that. And that leads me to inquire with you, what are your thoughts on self-disclosure in therapy on the part of the therapist? Do you endorse that? Do you support that? If so, how do you manage the appropriateness of self-disclosure should you choose to use it?
You sharing personal information.
Yeah, it's
Yeah,
clinically appropriate.
of course, of course.
Mm-hmm.
So I want to say I was definitely doing less of that.
Right?
Right, but
Mm-hmm.
as I'm getting comfortable, like, being
Yeah.
licensed and getting to know yourself as a clinician,
Yeah.
I use it more than I thought I would,
Mm.
but I do it in a way where I'm relating to the client
Yep.
and I ask for their permission. I say, can I share something
Mm-hmm.
personal with you?
Mm-hmm.
And of course, I do disclose that,
Mm-hmm.
this relationship, we don't share much about
Right.
ourselves, but I will share
Right.
certain things that I think is helpful to you, right?
Yes.
Because they do see you as this expert, as you're this perfect person.
Oh,
So I
yeah.
like to, when it relates, I'm like, well, this is something that, this is a coping skill that
Yeah.
I use, right?
Sure.
So I do use myself as an example when it comes to helping them, and it's
Mm-hmm.
relatable. So that way they know,
Wonderful.
like, oh, okay, if this person is doing this, then I can do it too.
Absolutely. Okay. Yeah, that's a really interesting perspective. Yeah, I think that not only does clinically appropriate self-disclosure on our part, not only
Right.
does it help to educate clients, but also, circling back to rapport building and
Mhm.
building that trust and that solid foundation. Because I think we're both probably aware that, um, you know, overall, I think in general, the chances for a client's achieving a positive outcome is so closely tied to the relationship, the therapeutic
Absolutely.
relationship,
Right.
So, and I think self-disclosure, when appropriate and useful, really helps to harness that and
Yeah.
help us move it forward. That's wonderful.
Yeah.
Great, great, great. How do you help a client measure their own outcomes, meaning chart, chart progress or acknowledge progress made or regression, or what does that look like to you?
Well, of course, I'm sure, besides
Yeah.
the whole like checking
Yeah,
in with like the treatment plan or to see if they're
sure.
reaching their goals, aside from that, I want to say gauging their mood and how they show up.
Yeah.
You could definitely see a lot in how they're
Mm-hmm.
carrying
For
themselves.
sure.
And a big part of progress is them just consistently showing up and
Yeah.
being there for themselves. And
Right.
I look for little things where if there's a certain way they would generally think, and then
Mm-hmm.
now they're showing like, oh, like this came up and I handled it this way, and
Right.
opposed to
Oh,
that,
yeah.
small changes that
Mm-hmm.
way where it's like, okay, like
Mm-hmm.
this is working for you.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and I don't know about you, but I call that out. I'm like, hold on, because it's so typical. I think we all do it as people. We'll say, "Oh, I did blah blah blah," very matter of factly, and it's this huge celebratory moment. I'm
Right,
like, okay,
right, right.
slow down, slow down, slow down. I want to hear about the. But wait a minute, did you hear what you just said to me? Slow down. And I said to a client recently, I think within the last couple of weeks, I'm like, I want to celebrate you for a minute. Can I celebrate you? And they're like, yes. And then when we talked about, oh, Carmen, you're so right. I did a thing. I wouldn't have done that 6 months ago. I'm like,
Right.
precisely. So
Yeah.
let's slow down and celebrate that. You did a thing there. And I love that,
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah.
And I'll be like, did you
Yeah.
just hear
Did you?
yourself? Like, did
I
you
heard you.
stand up? Because
Yeah,
I did. And then
exactly.
you're like, what?
Wait, what? Let's dial it back, but and sometimes we need to slow our clients down because it's even the slightest microscopically sized stride
We
is
see it.
exactly, and it's worth something. Don't dismiss it. You know what I mean? Yeah. Okay. That's lovely. That's lovely. You mentioned self accountability a few minutes ago. I had that it's been in my mind. What does self accountability mean to you in the context of your work with clients?
So I value self accountability in my personal life.
Mm-hmm.
I go by this saying, keep promises you make to yourself.
Mm.
And I want to say, once you do that, that gives you power and strength that I have my own back. I'm
Sure.
able to do the things that I
Yeah.
need to do.
Yeah.
And if I am living by that, that needs to show up in the room as well. So
Mm-hmm.
I want my clients to know that, they can count on me. And of course, self accountability is part of the work we do, where, this is something that you will learn to have for
Sure.
yourself, to count on
Sure.
yourself and
Mm-hmm.
not rely on me. I don't
Right.
want that in any ways.
Right.
I will assist you, but for you to have that accountability. But
Absolutely.
showing up, being there for my clients, right?
Mm-hmm.
If let's say there is a topic, something does come up,
Yeah.
remembering it, bringing it back,
Yeah.
and being there for them, being consistent,
Mm-hmm.
being accountable.
Mm-hmm.
That would
Wonderful. And I think you just basically answered my very last question for you. And I wrote these notes down because I didn't want to misquote you, but I was going to ask you, I was going to say to you, you have a ton of personal strengths and attributes that I picked up even just on the phone with you for a few minutes, but you really value, personal self accountability. You value consistency. I also picked up reliability. You also spoke to um, perceiving yourself as flexible and resilient. What can you tell me about those concepts?
So, resiliency, flexibility,
Mm-hmm.
it seems like it just keeps on coming up for me, right?
Yeah.
And in my life in so many ways, right?
Mm.
So, flexibility, being able to transition, being here,
Yep.
and duality, being able
Mm-hmm.
to see my client's perspective and have my own personal view, but not letting it get in the way. I'm actually ambidextrous. I'm both handed.
Yeah.
So, flexibility.
It's amazing.
duality,
Mm-hmm.
shows up again. But I wanted to say a part that's for me, that's life, right?
Yeah.
There's so many changes, and as a therapist, I do a lot of transition work. So being flexible, being friends with change and embracing change, having that ability to shift and not be set in your ways
Wow.
is really important, because
Sure.
it's important important to be the beginner again.
Yes.
You know, if you're constantly a senior, there's so much rigidity and you are
Yeah.
closing yourself from learning so much. So
Hmm.
being open to being new at things is so beautiful and
Yeah,
it's very important.
absolutely. And I think that's really, you can really generalize that even in work with clients and with your clients and work with my clients, not always being the expert, being coming from a place of humility. Whether it's, a discussion around, being culturally competent, or yeah, getting to know a client whose background you're not familiar with, and allowing yourself to take on the role of student. And listen, I'm here to learn from you because again, your journey isn't extremely important. There are parts, working parts or moving parts that I admittedly don't know, but I'm willing to learn. And again, that forges that relationship, that forges that therapeutic alliance, and it creates a space for the client to really go deep within, and
Yes.
explore. So I love that. I love that.
And I
Wonderful.
definitely do ask my clients, right,
Yeah.
if they disclose something. I don't think
Yeah.
the rule of, oh, can you tell me a little more about that? Like,
Sure.
I want to know it from your perspective. Teach me about your culture.
Absolutely. Absolutely. All very good. I love that. Is there anything as we wind down, anything that you would love for me to know, for our viewers to know that I didn't already ask you about yourself?
I think we covered a lot of
Almost. I know I
significant.
threw a lot at you. I know I threw a lot at you, more than you were probably, anticipating. But yeah, okay, okay. Well, wonderful. Well, Lilith, it has been an amazing experience talking with you. Thank you for joining me. I appreciate your time and your consideration. And as I always wind down with, if anyone has questions for myself, I can be reached by email, cmajid, cmajied.ip@soultenders.com. And how might people reach out to you via email? What's your email
Yeah,
address?
so my email address is lmelik, lmelik.ip@soultenders.com. So
Wonderful.
lmelik.ip@soultenders.com.
Wonderful. And if anyone has very specific questions about Provider Spotlight, they are free to reach out to Provider Relations. I believe the email address is providerrelations@soultenders.com. Once again, thank you for joining me. It's been a pleasure.
Likewise, thank you so
Thank
much
you.
for having me.
Already. Take care.